Yep, we're live. Attendees can see us.
Hi, everybody. My name is Richard Moore. I'm Executive Director of Texas Community College Teachers Association. Appreciate everybody being with us today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items. One is, as an attendee of the conference, you have access not just to these live events, but to the recordings of these events that we'll be posting shortly after they wrap up. So if you know of anybody who has missed this session, you can let them know, and they will they can log in and see it later. Let's see. Sorry, having some technical difficulties here. But we will have the recordings available. They'll be available for about 2 weeks. I'm sorry, 90 days actually. So people can go online and see them later. So have a look at those, take advantage of these opportunities, and make sure you share them with your friends. Also, hope everybody's doing okay in the middle of everything that's happening in Texas right now. I know this is something that the storms just blanketed the state, and we're all struggling with that. So our thoughts are with everybody. Please hang in there, and we'd love to hear from y'all, know how you're doing. If there's anything we can do on our end to help, please let us know. Go to our website. You can find contact information for me or anybody else. And we want to make sure we're staying in touch as we work our way through all this. So today we have with us Bill Hughes, Denise Leeser, and Melissa Stadler-Nitu to talk about some work that they're doing on some workforce training initiatives that they're involved in. I wanted to do a quick introduction on this, though, just because we started looking around actually at the beginning of the pandemic in March of last year, looking for partners that we could be working with to respond to the pressures that COVID was presenting to our state, and the role that community colleges needed to be playing in addressing these challenges. And what we were looking for in these partners were really people who themselves had the ability and also could work with us on our ability to be nimble in responding to rapidly changing events. Also that were affordable because we know that our students have limited budgets and our colleges are facing a lot of budget issues right now. They also needed to be online because so much of our programs are being offered online, as well as high quality. These are programs that we need to know that when we're offering them to our students, they're things that are going to have high value to our students, where we're not just limping through a crisis, but actually delivering high quality resources to our students. And also, finally, a solution that could really think systemically, where it wasn't just going to be a one-off thing we're doing over here on the side, but could really integrate into the work that our colleges are doing. And in my conversations with Bill Hughes at Job Ready, we found a partner that really checked all the boxes, which is really remarkable to be able to do all of those things well. I've heard that the saying that you can, what is it, cheap, easy, and fast, pick any two. And that's normally how it is. And we had a list of about 5 or 6 things, and Bill said, yes, we can do that. And so he's been just a really tremendous partner for us to get to know and work with this past year, and is offering what he's doing to our colleges around the state, and doing it at just a remarkable price point. So y'all please have a listen to what Bill and the team have to say today. And then if you'd like to follow up with him or any of them later, we'd love to, we can certainly get you in touch with them as we go forward. So Bill, why don't you take it from here, introduce your folks, and good to have you with us.
Richard, thank you so much. And
I think you're muted.
Oh, let's see. How about now? Is that better?
I can't hear you.
Yeah, you're good.
There we go. There we go. Sorry.
Okay. Richard, thanks very much. Really appreciate the introduction. It's been great to work with you and the folks at TCCTA as well. I'm amazed that you're pulling this off during this crisis time, and I'm sure that everybody who has electricity and wants to try to bring themselves back to a sense of normalcy really appreciates bringing this annual event, even during these interesting times. Hi, I'm Bill Hughes. I'm CEO of Job Ready. We are an outsourced provider of skills training. You can think of us as a skills OPM or skills as a service business, but we very much are focused on job seekers and all of the services that go around them. We have a wonderful panel that we've set up today. I want to introduce a couple of our panelists to you. We've got Melissa Sadlernitu and Denise Lesser, and we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves a bit. We're going to talk about the topic of integrated workforce development. And Richard talked a bit about a systems approach. So the integrated piece is about the system. It's not computer systems, it's the system of all the different actors in the ecosystem conspiring in a positive way together to support learners and job seekers, and in the same time support employers who have those occupational opportunities for them. We're going to talk a little bit about some work that we're doing in the state through the workforce program, and we're going to end up talking about some opportunities we see for our community colleges to have an impact as you think about how you serve your constituents, and also as you think about your mission in terms of how does that mission unfold, in the 2020s. So with that, I'd like to first bring onto stage Melissa Sadlernitu. Melissa, welcome.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Bill. Just a little bit about myself. So I've started the conversation, or I've been in the conversation of workforce development for over 20 years, and I'm currently working on my doctorate. And my doctorate is in a digital curriculum and instruction with a workforce training focus. So from that perspective, and then my professional position is managing director of C2 Global, and we are a company that operates workforce centers. Just to kind of clarify that a little bit of how I got from education into this place is looking at what I call the triangle of agencies. And the triangle of agencies, in my mind, comes from the collaboration that's mandated in federal workforce, federal higher education, and federal K-12 for all three of us to work together in tandem to develop comprehensive programs that will develop the workforce that our economic development organizations have brought into our local communities. So I've had the opportunity to move full circle from K-12 specialized workforce programs to higher education specialized programs, and now finally in the workforce board operating workforce centers. And so you could say it's really a life's work and a conversation that's fascinating to me, and I look forward to talking about it today.
So I've loved talking with you, Melissa, about this because you're such an innovator, and most innovators are problem solvers. So find a problem, it's like a hot zone, and then you start working at it. Tell us about what has been drawing your attention. Are there things that you're seeing in this triangle or in this system that aren't quite firing on all cylinders?
Yeah, well, I see, I think it's interesting that when we come up with mandates of collaboration and then we see how that works on the ground, that's where kind of the bumping of shoulders happens. So there's been some really great strides in the San Antonio Alamo region where I've done most of my work. And so conversations, the positives are that these conversations have been happening for quite some time across industries and agencies. I think our challenges come in is when we really try to put those pieces together. And that's where you begin to see the silos of the agencies. And when our policymakers aren't really conscious of the goals that the money that's given to the different agencies, what that money is supposed to do and how it may conflict with the other agencies. I think that's really where we see a lot of the disconnect, or where the conversations begin to break apart. So I think all three agencies have a good handle on what the industry needs are, what the workforce development needs are, but how we get there and how we move in a collective fashion towards a career pathway that has an open entry, open exit talent pipeline. That's where we need to really focus our conversations in and figure out who can do what right now. And to me, that's the most exciting part about the challenges that we're working with today.
Yeah, and when we've started doing work with you at with the Alamo program that you had introduced us to, I think there's a bunch of things that we started to see. One of them is so a lot of job seekers coming in, we don't know anything about them, and a group, especially in this pandemic, with all of the unemployment and people seeking services, a growing burden on career coaches, career counselors to figure out for each person they see, who these people are, what they're good at, what they should be doing. And that's almost an unrealistic expectation, when you're meeting somebody cold and then trying to process 10, 20, 50 people in a week. So we were pretty excited to see, to dig into that part of the problem, which is the first part of the pipeline. And we thought that if we could solve that part of the pipeline, there'd be some other downstream effects, which we'll get to. But let me introduce now Denise. Denise is a CEO of Great Biz Tools and the inventor, the innovator behind something called My Inner Genius, which is a career fit assessment. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Bill. Great to be here. Nice to meet everybody. Yeah, so we at Great Biz Tools, we really focus on creating assessment and evaluation tools for people through their whole life cycle of employment. And about 2 years ago, we created this new tool called My Inner Genius, which is really, it's a diagnostic, it's a development, and a career planning tool all rolled into one. And it's for career starters and it's for career changers. So it really meets the needs of a wide variety of people. And it's an unbiased assessment that's really focusing on people's potential, people's their innate capabilities and personality traits, and how that aligns to what employers are looking for, which is really a different take on it than what a lot of other assessment companies are making, to really focus on, let's make sure we're identifying people that and developing them for what the employers need. And I know there's been, a lot of research out there on that four-year institutions are not providing what it is that employers need, and that community colleges are much better, much more agile and able to adapt more quickly to that. And so I think there's a really good synergy with what you're doing at community colleges in the whole ecosystem that we're going to show you today.
Yeah, no, and one of the things you mentioned, community colleges, and I think you're absolutely right that there's a great sweet spot where community colleges can focus. In the conversations that I've had with folks in the sector, clearly that's where community colleges began, kind of more vocationally focused, industry focused. But over the last, decade or two, have started to shift their focus towards the four-year college pathway relationship. And, with these 2+2 models, for example, which are great, and they give a lot of people on-ramps into higher education. having said that, however, um, it doesn't actually address the other piece that you're talking about, which is and Melissa brought this up in terms of the speed and the agility of meeting employer needs, because you can't meet an employer need that's now and 6 months from now with sending someone into a 4-year pathway where you take them 2 years, they take another 2 years, and probably because they've got something else going on in their life, it might take them a total of 6 years before they're done. So that whole 2+2 model, while it's great and serves a need, it's missing this other employer need. And that's where I think we get to this issue of having a workforce development ecosystem that's not well integrated. You know, you've got one challenge is, and you talked about it a little bit, Denise, job seekers don't know where they want to go. You know, they're trying to understand what the opportunities are. If they're going to get skilled up, how should they get themselves skilled up in the short term, even if they have a long-term path of getting a degree, maybe because they want to go into management eventually, things like that. Employers aren't finding what they need from the workforce system because they're not looking at it as something that's agile, so they look to go around it. And then educators are losing out on the opportunity. I think we're going to talk a little bit about being the connective tissue in the middle of all this. And then workforce programs are sitting with the resources financially to put towards these problems, but unless they have able and willing partners that are aligned, they can't bring them in to actually serve these needs. So one of the things that we started talking about is how to connect the dots across this value chain where you have job seekers who where we understand the skills, the interests, and the aptitudes of them. We can do that through some sort of career fit assessment. And I want you to dig into that in the next few slides, Denise, because that's really what My Inner Genius is great at. And then recommending them out of that assessment process into a pathway. They may or may not be ready for a job. They may be capable of doing a job if they had the right training. But what is that training that should be aligned with them? How is that offered? And then how does that connect with employers? So, Denise, why don't you walk us through a little bit about My Inner Genius, how it works in that first part of the process?
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to mention real quick that you hit on, Bill, that's so critical, and that is the rate of change that's happening in the job market. Jobs are changing so quickly that by the time you end a 4-year degree, if you do get it done in 4 years, which most people don't, what you've learned is already outdated. And so we need to start thinking outside the box of just jobs. And so what we started doing is really focusing on the future of work. What is the future of work? What is it going to be? A lot of us, I mean, nobody knows, right? We just know that's going to change a lot. We have a preview with COVID that was kind of a dry run that there's some success and some not so successful of figuring out like, how do we work from home and how do we do different things and how do we revamp jobs really quickly. But we know that overall, there's going to be a much bigger disruption that occurs. So what we do with My Inner Genius is we're looking at capabilities. We're not looking at specific job skills. We're looking at underlying capabilities that are all of the, some people call them 21st century skills, soft skills. There's a lot of different terms for them, but we're looking at cognitive abilities and skills. We're looking at personality traits that are the personality traits are really the 21st century skills. And how do we create a common language for all of these systems to speak to? So how do we identify where you're at right now with your capabilities? What do we need? Where's the gaps that you need to fill to get prepared for jobs that are there now and for jobs in the future? And then how do we then fill those gaps? And then how do we help align those people that have filled those gaps to then roles that need those capabilities? So we create that common language. And we do that through these evaluations and assessments that we have that use neuroscience to really get at what it is that those underlying capabilities. And again, it's unbiased. We're looking at people's potential, not where they've been, but where they're going. And by doing that, we're creating a tremendous amount of opportunity for people in marginalized groups, in particular, by closing that equity gap, by helping them find new careers that have family supporting wages, that have a brighter future, that have a greater career trajectory than maybe they've been where they thought they could be. And I think that's the exciting thing, is a lot of these people are coming in and going, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And a lot of people don't even know what jobs are out there or what they'd be good at. So what we're doing with My Inner Genius is we're looking at what are the jobs that you're going to love and where are the jobs you're going to be successful, merge those two to really do a really great career match to help them identify jobs where they're going to be successful. And then through Job Ready, badging that. So we're helping them become, start creating their digital portfolio, making them more visible to potential employers. And with Job Ready, then training to fill those gaps to make sure that they can hit the ground running. It's all about making sure that these people are going to be successful. The people that go through our program are successful now and in the future. And if you focus on the capabilities instead of just particular jobs, then you can say, these capabilities are liquid, right? So as jobs change, the capabilities don't change significantly. There might be a few changes here and there, like agilities become really important, stress tolerance is really important, as we're seeing now. But all the other core capabilities are still there. They've just shifted to different roles. And if we focus on capabilities, we can really see how those fluid capabilities can easily help people guide them into different roles that use the same capabilities. We can layer on top different where they need to reskill to fill those roles, but it's a lot less painful than starting from scratch. And at the same time, we're helping them to find these careers that are going to be have a brighter future, family supporting wages, and they are going to be better prepared for the future. If we don't do something now, people that are marginalized now are going to be left further and further behind. And so this is, I think, just very, very exciting, the work that we're doing. And I know Melissa's going to get into, and Bill are going to get into more of the stats of the success of the program.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about in terms of this future proofing of careers is huge because you've got people who are very nervous about future and uncertainty and change and so forth. And the key antidote to uncertainty is agility. It's the ability to shift and move. And unfortunately, up to this point, most of what people have been encouraged to do has had a name on it with a perishable career title. None of the jobs I've had, I think for the first 30 years of my career, so I'm dating myself a little bit, none of those jobs existed when I started college. They're all new industries, new names of roles and so forth. So I was fortunate that in my development, we got a chance to focus on core competencies so that as the ground shifted underneath us, we could just take what we had and apply it somewhere else. But that is huge. And what I love about My Inner Genius is it actually gives somebody a chance from start to finish to go from that uncertainty of what do I do to getting some certainty about what could I do.
And the other thing I'm really excited about is that we create the roadmap all the way there from start to finish to take the guesswork out, because I think that's one of the biggest issues, particularly with people who are nervous or afraid, is that they get left behind and dropped off along the way because they don't know what to do. And so that was really important to us to create this system that creates a roadmap, taking as much of the guesswork out as possible so that they can focus on themselves and doing what they need to do to hit the ground running. And I think that, to me, again, it's a differentiator from what other systems are doing that just say, okay, here's some information. It's like, here's some information, and then there's calls to action. It's actionable information. And it's taking the guesswork out for them to really help them get started So they're just not dropped off and say, okay, you should be a nurse. Now what do you do to get started? They wouldn't, most people would have no idea how to get started. So I think that creating a system that with workforce centers, with community colleges, with Job Ready, to really support people in focusing on their success.
So Melissa, I'm wondering, just as we, just touching on that point, can you speak to, because you've been involved with the workforce programs and workforce centers for a while. They've got the responsibility of taking all these people and somehow figuring out what to do with them. What's the current state? And given what Denise was talking about, what do you see some of the opportunities are?
Well, I think one of the things I would like to kind of shore up here, and what I love about My Inner Genius, is that from the workforce center, the demand right now during COVID-19 has been incredibly high. The demand for the job seeker wanting the job, and also the demand for the employer wanting to fill entry-level positions. And I think when we approach it from kind of a human capital type theory to community development, then the natural inclination would be to say, oh, well, we have this many people unemployed and we have these many job openings, and why can't we just connect them? And that is always, it seems like a no-brainer, but then when you're working with the individuals that walk through the door, you said a couple of things. Bill, you mentioned the individuals that walk through the door, and how could one person, one counselor, and we have career counselors, how could they take that one individual and the complexity of the individual and what they've experienced, and then be able to plug. So you're kind of asking somebody to be an expert of all industries, an expert of all openings, and an expert of all human skill sets that have been built over time. And that's too much for one person. So what My Inner Genius does is it helps a person not just find out what they're interested in. We have career assessments out there. That's just one piece of the puzzle, finding out what they're interested in, and then knowing what their aptitude is to be able to achieve it, whether or not they even have those skills achieved. It gives us a starting point to put that together. And this has been sort of groundbreaking, I think, because we've always, and when I say we've always, and I guess you could say that's a fallacy, but I think the approach from the federal approach all the way down to the cities is to say, okay, we brought in all these companies and here's all these openings, and now all you have to do is send me the people. Well, the people who come through my doors, my job should really be to intake, assess, and then place, because I have the funding to place. So My Inner Genius helps me with the intake, the assessment, and then it's the next part of the placement, because it also gives us really good clues about where we place people. But now, how does that match up to the education environment around us? And how has community college or four-year college assessed not just the job market out there? I know you're very good at that. We have lots of data at our fingertips, and if we partner well, we have even more data at our fingertips. But what we've never really known a whole lot about are the people who walk through the door, and what are they going to be interested and skilled for, and how does it match up with what we're offering and what's available after we offer those courses.
Yeah, so you touched on a very powerful piece of this kind of this type of assessment, which combining the interest piece, where there's a lot of good interest assessments, and the core skills piece, where there are a bunch of good aptitude tests and games and things like that in terms of core skills, not your job skills and your training skills, that's a knowledge skills, but just your core ability, numeracy and attention to detail, all these different intangible things that can be applied in a lot of places. How do you actually put those things together? How do you know the fit of them? And how do you be an expert as a career counselor to not only detect those things in somebody, but also then to vector them to the right place? And what I find fascinating about My Inner Genius and the implementation that we have at Alamo is that you can do both of those things and then match those to the targeted occupations of the region. So now you're sorting people, or giving, I should say, fingerprinting people. I think of it as more of like a skills fingerprint, and figuring out how that print matches up with various jobs. You know, you might be in accounting at some point and you realize, you know what, they're going to outsource my accounting to a machine one day. You know, what am I going to do? Well, it turns out that cybersecurity has a whole kind of audit function that you might be great at, that you would have never thought you were a match. But by looking at those core skills, you could start to see where the dots connect. And so I love that. And the other piece that you mentioned is, you know, in the last part of this pathway, is the counselor pointing somebody to what the opportunities are. And we're going to come back to that, because that's really where there is an opportunity for community colleges to play a greater role. This, by the way, is sort of a picture of that fingerprint that Minor Genius has. And I really appreciate the identifying careers that people love, Denise. I think there's an intangible part of that your company brings that goes beyond just trying to do some sort of scoring. It's really trying to get to what's best for someone down the road and trying to give your best shot at that. So so now I'm going to move ahead and take a look at some the work that we've actually done in the state with Workforce Solutions Alamo. We started with them in the fall, late summer conversations into the fall, where they realized there was going to be this onslaught of intakes coming through the centers. And they needed to find a way to do an assessment. So we were selected as the assessment provider, which we're grateful for. And the first question we had is, you know, this assessment is not just a generic assessment like you might have that tests, you know, readiness for college or something generically. It's really has that extra overlay of how does this fit the needs of the region from an employment standpoint. So the first thing that came back to us was, here's the targeted occupations list. So can you somehow put that into the cake of Minor Genius? So we're able to do that. I think the challenge that the schools have, we talked a little bit before, is this 2+2 model. Doesn't really allow schools to think as at the speed of the market. I think schools are thinking as fast as they can. We're working with some great folks at a number of the community colleges in the region, but we're finding them wanting to move forward faster is, and I'll use North Central Texas College as an example, where they've tried to go beyond the 2+2 and looking at their adult education offerings for how do I actually do what we'll call rapid cycle skilling. So looking at this targeted occupations demand and saying, okay, what's in my catalog to be able to service that market? And given the gaps, how quickly can I actually deploy things in those gaps? One of the issues, of course, is you know, how do you fund that work? But I think it's kind of interesting to, Melissa, you pointed to one of the clues, which is that organizations like yours are overseeing dollars for that funding. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, real quick, because I think, you know, if you walk away with nothing else today, one of the things that I wish I would have known when I was in the community college setting is how much funding was out there in the workforce development boards and how little of it went to the community college. So I think we have some kind of statistic somewhere around 90% of the funding that workforce boards get and ends up going to proprietary schools. And a lot of that happens because competing goals, competing timelines, and who can respond the fastest and who can be the most nimble. And so I think a takeaway from that is there is funding sitting there. You don't have to go get a whole lot of extra funding, well, depending on where you're located. But then how do we both bend our structures enough to be able to work together and then make some of these things on the top 10 list happen?
Yeah, sometimes it seems like the innovations are not the technology or some, the insight is how do you get the different funding systems to work together? And because I think a lot of the learning stuff is already figured out. People like Denise are figuring out the assessment piece, but how do you actually programmatically organize it? So I think that's something we'll touch on in a moment. So with this kind of demand profile, Denise, do you want to talk about, you produce a report for WSA, and we've sort of summarized the charts here. If you could kind of tell us what you're able to give them back in terms of like real-time data regarding what they see when people come through the center.
Yeah, so we've created, and we're aligned with the ONET database, and we've been around for almost 40 years, have a great deal of job analysis as well. But we basically take every job that's out there, focus on the targeted occupation list, but we can go beyond that, and create a capability profile for that job. So what is it that's required? And not just like, is problem solving required, but what level of problem solving is required? So if you can think, remember that screenshot that Bill shared with the different bars, you'll see, it's not just an on or off, it's what level it exists. So we look at each job and we determine what it is that's required for success in that role. And then we evaluate people against those same metrics, create a capability profile for each individual, and then we digitally overlay that. So we can see with a radar chart, we can see exactly how closely somebody aligns to each job, and if there's any gaps, and identify gaps and development needs that we can fill to help them get ready for those jobs. But so they get all of that information. So they get this very comprehensive capability profile for each person. You get the radar charts that show how they match up against each targeted occupation that they're a match to or close to. And then in addition to that, then the user gets a lot of information on each job. They get a video that's a day in the life, a description of the job, what it takes to prepare, like how long it takes to prepare for that job, if you need a degree or if you need a certificate, what that entails. So we have salary ranges, whether it has a bright future or not. So does it have a large number of job openings projected in the future or a large number now? So we're looking at all this information and sharing it with both the counselor and the candidate that's coming in, the career seeker that's coming in. So they both have a wealth of information that's presented that's very easy to read, that helps them understand where they're at, where they can go, what they need to do to get there, and all the information they need to know, like what interests me, what do I like, of all the things that I can do, what appeals to me the most, where's the greatest need. So there's a lot of different motivations for people to choose which career they want. And we provide a lot of all that information that they need to be able to make that decision, depending on what their own personal needs are. And then the career counselor helps align that to funding that's available to help pay for the training and reskilling. Or if they're ready to go, they can help align them to employers that are ready to hire them today. The digital badges make them more visible to the employers. They're more marketable to the employers. Employers can actually search a database for people that have earned the badge so they can even find them on their own. So we've created really a system that's really designed to help people be successful, set them up for success, help them to hit the ground running, but providing them that information. Because a lot of people do not know what their capabilities are or how to communicate that to employers. We provide them all that information so they understand what their capabilities are, and the information to provide, to communicate that to employers. The career counselors have that too. So they're the perfect go-between. to be able to talk to the career seeker and the employer.
That's a great point, that you're you're essentially creating the script for someone's sort of self-awareness and their self-confidence. This is what I can do. Because it's readable, someone else can read that, like a career counselor, and say, now I understand what this person's good at, as opposed to looking at them for, say, deficits, or I don't know, or I'm not sure. Now you're giving confidence to that career counselor, and then both of them developing language for that person then to have a conversation with an employer. I'm strong here. This is where I think, here's some examples of that, but I have a confidence that I'm getting that. So that's at the level of each individual person. It takes what, an hour, 45 minutes to go through the assessment?
Yeah, so it starts out with the interest and preferences, which is about 10 to 15 minutes. And then the career matching piece is about 30 minutes. So it's about 45 minutes altogether. It's broken into 2 sections.
Great. And then, so now at the aggregate piece on the screen here, you're able to, I think this is the data from the last 6 weeks or so, the number who come in and are given this survey to complete voluntarily. It's basically, if you want, if you want to engage in services around these type of things, we recommend you do this. Over 75% are completing who start, which I think is interesting. And then of the folks who complete, 94% are being matched to at least one kind of career opportunity space, which I think is extraordinary. So that then gives a level of visibility. It's almost like turning on an X-ray machine into the workforce pipeline, so that you can see. And I think you go further even, where you've got these different jobs. You've bucketed them at a high level into the professional technical jobs, things like coding and IT, and then you have some non-office technical jobs, I guess, like some manufacturing and welding and things like that. Professional office jobs, maybe medical billing and coding, or
Accounting, HR.
Accounting, HR, things like that. And then professional service jobs might be nursing or teaching or things like that, right? So, I think there were like 40 or 50 jobs that were in the locus for Alamo.
84.
And 84. Oh, wow, that's great. And people were able to match to one or multiple, right? You just didn't pick one. It's like all the ones that you matched to, you got feedback on.
Right. So they still have an opportunity to make their own choices based on the information they provided, rather than just saying, nope, we're going to pick one job for you and that's it.
That's great. And the other thing that I thought was fascinating was you added a leadership kind of component to this, or sort of leadership aptitude. And 76% of people coming through the center matched on leadership. And, as we know, there's Melissa could tell us, I'm sure there's a wide variance in terms of some people's backgrounds of coming into the center. Some are coming in because they've been laid off from white collar jobs. Some people are, have been working kind of service jobs or part-time temp jobs, and may or may not have even completed, college, or even sometimes even high school, much less college. But nevertheless, they have something about them that means that they can be a leader. So if I'm Walmart and I'm, maybe that's a bad example, but Walmart or McDonald's, these are organizations that actually care a lot about leadership. They bring people in at entry level, but it's a very expensive thing if you're turning over 100% of your workforce every year and not growing them into management. So the ability to see that someone has leadership aptitude, I think, is really important, because I think it also changes the way that an employer will look at somebody, as opposed to just saying, well, you don't have this credential or that credential, so I'm not going to look at you that way. For someone to say, actually, this person has a spark, this person has something that would allow them to play a leadership role or function in your organization. I think that's a huge benefit. And then the finer grain matches that you are aggregating, I think also tell an interesting story when you break down within these matches. I know, Melissa, you had some ahas when you were looking at this and you thought about the the supply and demand situation around talent in the Alamo area.
Absolutely. This is probably my favorite chart of all, because it gets it really, I like the way you said it tells the story. You know, just a couple of things that we notice off the top. Notice the top match in dental hygienist. I don't think any of us as city leaders, city planners, people even in the community college, it's always been there. Dental hygienist has always been there, and we've always known that it's a target demand occupation for most areas in the United States. But what we didn't know is how many people were interested in it. And then what does that look like if you were to match that? And I don't know the answer to this question, I'm just throwing it out there, but what if you look at now how many schools are actually producing or have a program for dental hygienists, and what's their output per year? And does that match the demand that we have on the job side, the demand on the job seeker side, and the supply on the workforce training side? So that one was really interesting to me. That was probably the biggest aha moment. I think the other part that was really interesting is how many people we had coming in as HR specialists, customer service reps. Those were really high. So the other part to this, the other piece of this, I know that we all want to push folks into a job that will make them the most money and have the most longevity. But sometimes people have to start where they're at. And now what does HR specialist evolve into? What's the top out of that? How does somebody grow within that career pathway? What about a customer service rep? Because customer service rep, you could say, oh, well, that's just a call center job. Or you could look at what's happening now. You couple that with CompTIA IT certifications. The customer service rep is now the person that you get on the other end of your call, and they help a company with their computer help desk needs, and they eventually get hired by that company because the company likes that particular person. It's a really interesting field that a lot of people don't know about, and these fields keep changing and upgrading. So I love this information. I think it tells us a lot. I can't wait till we have a year's worth of data to share.
Absolutely. And to your point of connecting the dots, this I think is a chart that starts to get at how you connect the dots across these things, just showing the artifacts from the earlier in the presentation, where on the one hand, you've got the career fit distribution that we just saw, and you can see where those matches are. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the targeted occupations from employers. And that suggests, and you look at the supply and demand, I thought it was interesting that there are more opportunities than there were matches. So I think that's one interesting thing, and hopefully encouraging to people who are looking for a job. And then the other piece that's circled in red is really, this is, as you were just mentioning, talking about what's the potential demand for skills training in these areas. We at Job Ready, we have about 8,000 or so courses available in a large library that our clients can draw from, and they can build programs. And I know one of the programs that North Central Texas built recently was for demand on electrical skills. I got an email that they needed it, and in under 30 days, the course was up and running, and they were starting to enroll people. And folks were going in there. It's all self-paced, so they don't have to deploy, an instructor to know all of the content. Although in their model, they do have an instructor kind of supporting the learners and the learning process, which I think is a really important variant of the totally online, and it also aligns with their kind of credentialing accreditation objectives as well. So, but they're able to spin up that electrician model very quickly. It's all example-based, video-based, and with manipulatives, so someone can actually see how do you actually create a circuit, what are the tools that I use, but they're doing it all digitally, which is fascinating. So they can now change their product mix based on the targeted occupations, based on the demand that they're hearing from employers, the conversations are, so now they have enough confidence. And one of their clients, they're actually going in, I think they have 2 corporate clients, they've gone in and said, what do you need? And they're able to be responsive to that. I thought that was really exciting as a development and a kind of a validation of this rapid cycle skill development model. And that kind of points to this other piece, which is, we talked about the 2+2 model, which is on the left, where community colleges are seeking to serve the 4-year colleges and be pipelines and feeders in there. And that's great, but there are some issues there. On the positive side, there's a higher ed credential. You get Title IV funding. Time to market, though, is 1 to 2 years every time you want to come up with a course because of the way that things have to be evaluated to obtain that Title IV funding. It requires a longer student commitment, so that's going to shrink your market in terms of who's eligible and interested. And it's a challenge to align that, as we were saying, with industry demand. Looking at this rapid cycle skill development model on the right-hand side, that's more aligned with employers. There you're looking at industry credentials. So that may be an association-based professional certification like CompTIA A+, or Google or AWS Cloud administrator, or Microsoft Office specialist, or something like that. It might be a de facto credential in areas where those professional credentials are not formalized, like Python developer. There's also opportunities for funding from workforce programs, as Melissa said, and even more so with CARES Act money, and probably the CARES 2 or whatever is going to be coming down the pike with the new stimulus packages that are going to be unfolding. Time to market is weeks, maybe months, if you want to take the time to really build out a particular program. But we found that the issue is more like, how do you want to market this in terms of development, as opposed to actually the courses are there. These are courses that are built by and for the Fortune 1000 and the leading employers around the world to train their own staff internally. And what we've done at Job Ready is to kind of jailbreak that training out of the corporate deployment model and into a deployment model that's available to academic partners and the workforce partners. And now we're talking about these things are leading to employment opportunities, as opposed to and require maybe weeks or maybe months in the longest time for skill development. And they're highly aligned and responsive to industry. Now, one of the other pieces that we've noticed, and we talked to a couple of our partners about, was something that's on the left-hand side in green, bundling of certificates into Title IV training. So, there are courses with, a required textbook, an elective textbook. Imagine if your elective textbook was a digital self-paced course that yielded a certification at the end, right? So that is something that they can complete during the course. Maybe they complete it afterwards, but it's bundled alongside. It's just like, I've got my book on agile project management. I'm not in this class anymore, but I have the book. Well, in the same way, someone could be done with the class and still have the certification training or the skills training, and on their own pace, or maybe even with the support of the school, get that certification. Now they've got it. They're also, in the case of this, the bundling, they're still pursuing a degree and credits and so forth. But while they're doing that, they've got a job credential, which is really powerful. Other models that people are looking at are things like prior learning credit, so that as you take one of these courses and get a certification, that you will actually get credit for prior learning. So there are organizations are actually looking towards that. So we're going to wrap up here, but just got a couple of more points. The takeaways here, first, the career fit assessment connects the dots across the talent pipeline around talent training and employment, and provides insights into the placement opportunities that can drive the planning and alignment across all of these stakeholders, so that the right people are getting the right training for the right jobs at the right time. To make that happen in an agile way, rapid cycle skilling is an important piece. And this is a huge opportunity for community colleges. We think so. Community colleges have, their roots are vocational, as we mentioned in the beginning, have gone and started shifting towards serving a market that's frankly under substantial pressure now, which is the four-year colleges, where there's a lot of consolidation going on. There are a lot of schools that are wondering, are they going to have to merge? Are they going to go out of business? So being a feeder into that sector becomes problematic. And there's an available model that the proprietary schools have already proven, and they've proven there's money there. They've proven it can be done. But we know that often the challenge for community colleges is they don't have the resources to invest to bring these programs to market. Well, partners like Job Ready actually make that a turnkey decision as opposed to a long project. And so we hope we get a chance to visit with you all. Feel free to visit our booth or go to our website, www.jobready.me, and you can connect with us. Melissa and Denise, do you have any final comments before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you very much. And I just think there's as Bill said, just a tremendous opportunity for community colleges to fill this gap that exists in the rapid cycle training. So thank you very much.
Just thank you for allowing us to present and some really exciting things that we have. And I like to think of this as the workforce of the future. And so I would be happy to share some of the best practices that we've learned with anybody.
Great, thank you all. Melissa, well, I'm looking for all of us to get together behind you at Riverwalk this summer sometime, God willing.
Yeah, it doesn't look like this today.
Yes, everyone, brighter days ahead. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.